Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome to this session with eminent speakers in front of us. I am Renu. I am the editor of WFM Media. We deal with a lot of things which is related to facade and fenestration. A warm welcome to all our audience to this virtual webinar. Let me start with the introduction of all the speakers who are there with us. I hope you can see the screen, right?
Yes.
So I start with the introduction to what is WFM community and what we are doing. WFM Media started in 2013, and we started with a magazine called Window and Facade, which is now 8 years old, and it's a bi-monthly magazine. And we realized the need for forming a community for inclusiveness. This include all the construction and real estate members, including architects, builders, consultants, facade consultants, as well as other consultants, and real estate members, of course. And our aim is to develop a self-sustaining, growing professional platform, network to connect the brands and influencers, to connect various professionals in the industry, right from the design stage, the construction stage, wherever you are finding some kind of concern, you can sit and discuss together on the platform. We have about 2,500 to 3,000 members in this platform since we started it in last October. So we consider it as a great progress so that people are interested in such kind of community. So welcome to the community. Our first speaker today, and the youngest one, I believe, is Mohammed Shoaib. He's a BIM specialist. He's an architect from Capricorn Technologies. He did his BArch from Jamia in Delhi. Shoaib is an architect with skills. He likes to experiment with design, research, and he's done a lot of projects. He likes to use various latest technologies and tools like Autodesk, Revit, Dynamo, and so many others. And I think he loves to do experiments with all these tools, and he's done worked with various organizations, helping them to create sustainable developments, design sustainable developments, and to create a better sustainable tomorrow. Welcome, Shoaib. Our next speaker is Maz. She is from New Energy, and she's an architect again, and a building energy analyst. She's the founding partner. At a young age, she has started such an organization of great value. She's done her master's in building engineering performance from CEPT. She too experiments with various tools, and she has done her research abroad in a very, very great organization from Minnesota in USA in 2016. And then she started learning building performance and evaluation, worked on so many projects. Her thesis was also on this subject. Maz, welcome to you to this platform.
Thank you, ma'am.
And our third speaker is from another consultancy, Design to Occupancy Services, Mr. Kushagra Juneja. He's the partner in this firm. He's associated with various organizations like BEE, ECBC, ASSOCHAM, and he's a Griha trainer. He's an IGBC. There are so many associations he's working with, and he's a trainer as well as an evaluator for Griha, LEED, ASSOCHAM, and so many others. His area of expertise includes sustainability in built environment, energy efficiency, green building, and mechanical design services. The organization Design to Occupancy serve various builders as well as architects operating internationally. He has been awarded Rajasthan Energy Conservation Award in 2016. He had been a speaker in various forums. He also works with the core committee of IGBC Jaipur chapter. He is a treasurer of Indian Building Performance Simulation Association and serves on the National Council of ASSOCHAM. He worked with various state governments like Rajasthan, Jharkhand, Gujarat, and for the ECBC for all these state various projects. And he's also internationally worked with various assignments in USA, Nigeria, Mauritius, and many other countries. Welcome, Kushagra, to this forum. Our next speaker is from a very well-known organization, Environmental Design Solution, EDS. Mr. Gurneet Singh is known to all of you. He's got over 15 years of experience in green building developments, sustainability, energy efficiency. He's an energy efficiency consultant, and he's a master in sustainability and sustainable buildings and a crusader of green buildings. He's been working with LEED Griha certification of projects. He specializes in integrated building design using simulation tools to assist the design and diversity of projects. He's an energy efficient building consultant, and he takes care of the performance of buildings considering the daylight, heat, ingress, and other various aspects which you consider for green buildings. Gurneet is keenly exposed to automation and performance evaluation. There are so many qualifications, and I think it's never ending. You can go to our website and read about Mr. Gurneet and also visit his website to understand what the consultancy is all about. He's been working with LEED and ECBC. He's been in developing codes. So in daylight analysis, passive solar designs, and advancement of the whole building performance, diagnostics tools, and other things. Very learned person. Welcome to you, Gurneet.
Thank you, Renu.
Our next speaker is very well experienced senior consultants from Bentley System, Mr. Stuart. Stuart has been working with Bentley products in Australia and UK since 1993. During that time, Stuart has worked on various projects, international projects, as well as within the country. And Stuart specializes in having first-hand understanding of technology-driven design techniques and delivery. Originally from Australia, Stuart spent 12 years in UK and then relocated to Australia with Bentley System in 2011. Stuart is a senior consultant, as I mentioned. He is providing technology advice to architects and engineers. Welcome, Stuart. So I think our moderator, Guru Prakash Shastri, does not require any introduction. Every student, every green building consultant, every architect in India must be knowing him. Guru Prakash Shastri is a green building professional with over 17 years of experience, and his master's degree in sustainable energy engineering from Stockholm. Currently working as a regional head, infrastructure at Infosys. Infosys is well known for all their green buildings, and I envy those people who are working in those buildings. It's an amazing environment in those buildings. When you enter, you feel the positivity. He heads the design for new projects and is also responsible for driving environmental sustainability initiatives across Infosys campus. In the last 12 years at Infosys, he has been instrumental in implementing several innovative technologies in building in the areas of building design, energy, water, and wastewater management. Infosys has set a new benchmark for resource efficiency in office buildings and is considered a global leader in environmental sustainability. Infosys is among few corporates in the world to have achieved carbon neutrality. We are so proud to have you over here, Mr. Guru Prakash Shastri. Welcome to this panel.
Thanks, Renu.
I invite all our audience and request you to write your questions on the chat box. You can post it over there, and at the end of the session, it will be handed over to Mr. Shastri, and the questions will be asked to all the concerned panelists, whomever you are addressing it to. So let's have a fantastic session. I'm sure we'll have great knowledge. We will learn a lot of things from all the panelists. Thank you and welcome. So over to you, Mr. Guru Prakash.
Yeah, thanks, Renu. I hope I am audible to all. So it's a very good afternoon to everyone, all the panelists and all the participants. And I'm sure we'll have a wonderful session. Just to give you a background, buildings today account for 1/3 of global energy end use, and a significant amount of emissions, as you can imagine. And it's very important to have the future buildings designed in a super efficient way, and it involves everything from building design to building systems inside the building, and also the equipment selection, everything. But the first and the most important aspect, as we all know, is the building facade, and how different interventions in the building facade can achieve a super efficient building. For the life cycle of the building, you have a low energy consumption, more comfortable environment, and so on. So we have experts in the field today. We have very well-known experts on this panel, and the way we are going to do is um, I will be maybe asking one question to each of the panelists, and we have maybe 2 rounds or 3 rounds of questions to each of the panelists, and then we open up the stage for Q&A. So I'm sure we'll have a wonderful discussion. It'll be a great learning experience for all of us with different people, experts in this industry. So, let's get started. And I would request all the panelists to keep your answers short and precise, so that we get more time for discussions, and other panelists also get a chance to make the point. So, going with the lady first, architect Maz Dikshit. So the first question to Maz is, Maz, you have been working on building design, right? As a consultant, and you also done some research. So what do you think are the key contributors to building performance, and how important do you see the role of building facade?
Okay. Thank you, sir, for the question. I think I would like to separate two things. First is the active systems that impact the building performance, and the second one is the passive, the passive strategies that impact. So in passive, the first and foremost is the climate. So the location, the climate is what impacts the most. Then comes the orientation, massing, and all. Wall assembly, the materials that you select for your wall, roof, and fenestration have a lot of impact on the overall heat gain of the building. So that in turn impacts your total energy use. The lower heat ingress there is there in the building, the lower the energy use or the sizing of the system is going to be there. So you reduce your energy consumption at first by just placing your building in a proper way and selecting proper materials. So that's the first and foremost thing that you do. The second thing, the next step is to make sure the active systems are right. So in active, you have HVAC, like the air conditioning systems. So these days you have B star rated appliances, 5-star rated. So what they mean is they are trying to have more performance by using less energy. So use more efficient systems. And also internal loads, like what are the equipment within the building, how do people use the equipment, do they keep the laptops on 24/7, does it impact the internal heat gain? That's also something that contributes to the overall building performance. And lastly, the second part of the question is how is the facade impacting the performance of a building? So I would like to say that the use of the building, like whether it's naturally ventilated, mixed mode, or air conditioned, has an impact on how you design the facade, firstly. And second, what are the materials that you use to design the facade? What is the U value of your fenestration, SHGC? How you design your shading devices is going to impact the energy consumption of the building. And one point that I would like to make is the buildings that had interior dominated buildings, like interior load dominated buildings, the energy performance of those buildings do not like it's not substantially impacted due to the envelope measures. So that's what I think about your question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Maz. So an integrated design is what is very important according to you. Yes, thanks. So moving on to Stuart, you've had a huge experience in using different tools for building design overall, and you have a vast experience working in different countries. So how do you think the technology can benefit us in the design of buildings in general, and maybe facade design in particular? Yeah, you're on mute.
Thanks for that. I was on mute. Thanks for having me on board too. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I've got a little slide here. I'll just share the screen. It might help answer some of these questions here, or your question. Look, I'm sharing the screen here. So the way technology can help here, facades themselves are often, more often than not, repeating set of components, a pattern more or less. And that pattern can often be the same as it repeats, or there can be some slight variations, as you can see in the two images put on the screen. In a simple form of technology, the situation on the left, which I've called a common situation, may use a common dialogue for the user to input a set of parameters, which will go and build up a facade, an example facade, but like you might see on the left-hand side there. But in a more complex situation, you need to give the user the ability to customize and program their own situation. So, without these tools, it's a time thing. The user is going to spend a lot more time manually building these models in 3 dimensions, rather than using a tool to make that process a lot quicker and inevitably go through more iterations to find a better design and a better design workflow there. As time's moved on, I've used the Gherkin project as an example here. This was quite unique because it brought to the forefront a technology called computational design or generative design, as some people call it. Now, this particular building didn't use computational or generative design as we know today. It used a programming language in the back end to allow the designers to do what they've done with this building, but it was the precursor for what you can see on the right-hand side next to that image, which is a node-based diagram approach to programming effectively, which allows you to do a lot more complex algorithms with your facade design, but bringing it back to the non-coder, someone who inevitably wouldn't necessarily go into code, but can do if they need to. So, yeah, really, technology has allowed us to do a great deal more in a shorter space of time.
Please.
Thanks, Stuart. So, Stuart, can you also name the software? What tools are available today? Quickly, if you can name a couple of them, which are very useful in such complex situations.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm biased. I work for a company called Bentley Systems, and the two technologies we've got here. So we have a technology called generative components, and that generative components technology sits in many products that we have. For building design, it's a product called Open Buildings. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the curtain wall tool that we have inside. Sorry, on the left-hand side, you can see the curtain wall tool we have inside Open Buildings. For most situations you would have in facades, but where we need more complex situations, we turn to our technology called generative components to be able to customize our situations a little more deeply and a little more extensively to achieve such results.
Okay, sure, thanks. So now moving on to Gurneet. So Gurneet, you have worked on several projects, several different type of projects over the last decade or so, and more than decade. So what do you think are the key drivers for a particular facade design from the performance point of view in the different types of buildings that you've seen?
Yeah, so I believe you are talking about efficient facade design, right? Or in any facade design. So if you are talking about any facade design, the key parameters in the order of precedence are, first of all, the looks. Then comes safety, ease of maintenance, cost, and lastly, they talk about thermal performance and visual performance. But I believe you are talking about energy efficiency in facades. So we are talking about efficient facade design. So I feel the key driver for designing a climate responsive or efficient facade design is an architect. Right? Surprise, yes. So from my experience with almost like 99% of the project, it's the architect who actually drives an efficient facade design. Basically, architects are the creators who are responsible for the visual appearance of the facade. And I'm telling you that they have got a great convincing power. They can convince the client on a design concept, even if that design concept is expensive or is not easy to maintain. So the other thing is when they are conceptualizing the facade. So basically, the architects are the first person who are conceptualizing the facade, and we all know that we should dress properly. Looks matter, right? So for building, the facade is the look, and architect is the one who designs the concept. And at that moment, if they bring in sustainability or climate into, or integrate that aspect into a facade design, that is where you get a great facade or energy efficient facade. And in my experience, you can actually put so there are like three paradigm of facade design. There are like three buckets. There are one set of designers who design a very clean facade, which are easy to maintain, which gives a modern look. But as we all know, they perform not so good on performance, on indoor thermal comfort. That's why you see all the most of the buildings covered with internal blinds. Then there is second set of designers who basically try to bring in some elements, horizontal, vertical, or play around with facade. From the aesthetic point of view, these elements may or may not contribute to the efficiency of the design. And then the last one is the team who basically integrates the climate, as Mars has said, orientation, the climate, sun movement, and try to integrate that with the facades that they are designing. And I'm very happy to see that they are also able to deliver great looking facade. So there's a like great looking efficient facade. And I'm very fortunate to work with such architects and which are able to take into consideration all the climate factors into account and still deliver a great looking facades.
Right. So yeah, the third category of architects is what everybody wants to definitely see, but unfortunately the percentage of those architects are very minuscule, I would say. Anyway, so that's the whole point of this kind of a discussion, I guess.
The reason
everybody on to the
reason maybe also because The reason may be also because the client demands a modern looking building.
Yeah, but architects have a convincing power, right? Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
to next question is to Shoaib, Mohammad Shoaib, who is a BIM specialist. So, Mohammad, how do you think the design tools like BIM can help in achieving an integrated design for buildings? How do you get all the things together using the BIM? How does it make your life easy?
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Before moving ahead, I would like to share a slide here. So I'm sharing a slide, and I think my screen is visible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we look at the study, this one was done by Bureau of Economic Analysis. If we look at the study from 1950s to 2012, we see that productivity per person has been decreasing in construction industry. This bottom line is about construction industry, and the highest productivity we see, that is this blue line. So what is, and this blue line is representing manufacturing industry in this case. So what is the reason behind it? There's another study where we can find the reason here, that IT spending by industry, if we this is up to 2010 data. If we again look at this study of IT spending by industry, then as you can notice, construction industry has been lacking behind. Over the world, 1.2% of IT spending is done in construction industry. Why manufacturing is moving ahead in productivity? Because obviously IT spending is much greater than construction industry, and so the highest investment in IT is in banking sector, and we have already seen that during our lifetime. That a few years back, or 5 to 6 years back, we used to actually need to stand in long queues to get the transactions done. But now, by the click on our systems, or by using few apps, we can just manage our whole account. So that is just because information technology has been invested in these areas. In construction industry, what is that IT investment? That is actually about bringing BIM. So obviously, this BIM, many of the people have already heard it. Some of them also know the significance and the definition of it, but I'll show you a broad perspective here. So basically, when handicraft was common, then the focus was more on aesthetics and craftsmanship. Then industrialization came, and the focus was shifted to technology. But the aesthetics was lost during this process, because the focus was on production and functionality. Now we are actually demanding, this is today's expectation, that we want to get the best out of all the industries, and that can be done by implementing obviously good design along with good technology. So BIM is one such technology. Obviously, concept wise, everybody in this panel knows BIM. That is, stands for Building Information Modeling. But the common misconception is that here the word building is taken as a noun. It is not actually about a building. It is about creating a digital representation of the functional and physical characteristic of a facility. So we are not actually sticking only up to the building. So, and we are investing multiple geometries or parameters, and at the end we are getting analysis and compliances. So so this is only one part of BIM, which most of people actually already are familiar about. The second aspect of BIM is that it's an integrated design approach, where we actually start from the inception of the design up to the renovation or maybe the demolition of the project. We are involved with the same technology, and that is where BIM comes into play. Talking about facade design, I think before that I should talk about McLeamy curve. So I'll quickly move to facade design also. So McLemy, this curve was actually created by Patrick McLemy. He's one of the architects, one of the renowned architects from UK. This curve, I tried to map it here. So if we take design stages in x-axis and time and efforts in y-axis, then this is the traditional workflow where we get a task done according to the stages we need to deliver. For example, for conceptual design, we only focus on concept there. Until up to construction documentation, we do not put much efforts here. But in BIM workflow, we actually focus on design first and then automate construction documentation and construction during construction phase. Documents are automated actually.
So, Mohammed, you may want to speed up. I
okay, sure. So what it? Okay, sure, sir. I'll sum it up in 2 minutes. So my point is, ability to change reduces and the cost of change increases. And at a certain point, we do not have the ability to change much because that will cost more. For that, we need to actually shift our effort from documentation stage to the design stage more. And in that case, BIM actually help in this case. So this is the original McLemy curve, which I try to remap again. So if we put more efforts during the initial stages of the project, like by creating a virtual asset, then we need not to actually focus much on the documentation stage. And documents are kind of taken from the single source, and those can be automatically updated. So now BIM tools for facade design. Now I'll talk about LOD a bit brief. LOD stands for level of development. So a level of development brings the level of information, level of modeling into BIM model. In that case, when we are delivering conceptual design, then the softwares which can be used for facade design specifically can be SketchUp. Most of the architects are using SketchUp, but along with multiple plugins, you can incorporate complex designs to SketchUp model as well. Then you can use Format as well, which is also one of the equivalent softwares to SketchUp. You can use, many people use Rhino as well, that is more popular. And Revit can be used for delivering conceptual model during initial stages. Then when we move to LOD 200, that is detailed design, Rhino can be used with the combination of Grasshopper for getting the getting into the complexities of the facades. Like you can get pinpoint details of the components, and those components can be repetitive, and those can be controlled by scripting as well. Then Revit can be in combination with Dynamo can be used for details design, and Inventor is that software which can be used to visualize details up to the components of the facade. Then moving ahead to analysis. For analysis, we can, in combination with the design tools, we can use different tools for analysis. For example, if I only focus on BIM, then Revit and Inventor and Format are actually BIM softwares. In these softwares, Revit Insight is that plugin which can be used along with Revit. And for Inventor, we can use stress analysis for further load analysis on these softwares. Then as BIM model matures, we move to LOD 400 or 350 to 400, where contractors are actually on board with other consultants. Then we can use AutoCAD, Rhino, and Revit for construction documentation. Then similarly, this is the last slide. Then for project management and for the delivery of the project, we may need LOD 400 to 500 model, where we can use collaborative platforms. Local collaboration can be done on Revit as well. Otherwise, Navisworks is used for further clash detection and for 4D simulation. When you club construction activities along with the BIM model, then Navisworks come into play, and we can simulate that in fourth dimension as well. Fourth dimension is time here, so you can link Primavera schedule with Revit model, and Navisworks can simulate that process. BIM 360 is that online platform. It's a cloud-based system where multiple consultants can club together and can collaborate efficiently.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Assemble is one such tool. RIB is again another tool. So these are a few of those tools which can be used. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, sir. So I'll stop sharing my screen. And adding to that, not only BIM is sufficient for good facade design, like sir said, a great looking high performance facade designs, BIM is not only enough. We may need to also incorporate computational design in that case. And computational design, like Stott sir mentioned, can be used like most of the designers are not well versed with programming, but if someone is well versed with computer programming, then we can also introduce computational design to it, and that will give us better results.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of tools available, and I think it's very exciting to see so many different tools available for different levels of design, which you can utilize to have a good building, clash detection, and a lot of things that can be done apart from building a sustainable adaptive design. Now coming to Kushagra. Now he's also been running a consultancy for quite a few years, and he has varied experience in different regions, different types of climates. So Kushagra, what is your experience with clients on facade design, moving from contemporary to modern or innovative or even adaptive design? What usually drives the decision, and how do you try to convince as a consultant, how do you convince the client towards adaptive design from all these evolution?
First of all, thank you for having me here. Basically, facade is something that expresses multiple ideas about a building's design. It can describe the style of structure. It can talk about the use of materials, their execution. Also, you can identify, though this definition has been kind of mixed up, where you'll see something that was contemporary earlier, something like a mud construction, which has been an age-old practice, is now a very adaptive or an innovative kind of a thing because nobody uses it. So that shift keeps happening from this place to that place, and their execution can often narrate in which period that construction was built in. It is a mask or an interactive screen, basically, which the inhabitant approaches the outside world. So let me give you an example of my city, which is the city of Jaipur, where I belong. And within the same city, you'll get buildings like Hawa Mahal, a popular building you'll see on the map of Jaipur also, which is a contemporary design, well ventilated. There is a jewelry building which is all lit. The facade is all lit. There's a major cement manufacturer there. The headquarters building is jali kind of a facade with cement jali. Then you'll see a building which is like a mall building, which is also a landmark building, but like any other building in Gurgaon, a very glass-oriented facade. So within the same city, you will see contemporary, modern, innovative, and a lot of times it depends on a lot of parameters. In the past, like Gurneet said, facades were expressed as ornamental exteriors and were expression of grandeur, were expression of prestige. But as modernism is approached, I think ornamentation is kind of going down, and modern architectural practices are coming up. Minimalism is catching up. Glass has been a very alternative solution. So the decision making is also very multifaceted. Budget, I would say, Gurneet said that architects are often able to convince the owners, but I think we live in a very cost-sensitive market, and budget is a very high consideration thing in every project. Design preferences, definitely, and alignment of the team on something they want to express, but a lot of times it is also preconceived notions, because let us say an architect is used to, and I have seen a lot of such cases in my experience, where an architect is convinced that he has to go with glass, and he will do everything to convince you that a DGU can be better than a brick or a blank facade. So at times, DGU is definitely a good choice, and DGU is no comparison to be made with. But at times, it is also not a rule of thumb that, you know, you put a DGU and you are done with it. It is just a preconceived notion of an architect that he convinces you to go with the glass. So just to give you an example, put a DGU in a bedroom with a big window facing south, and you would know what I mean. So space constraints are oftentimes a problem. Cost of real estate is a problem. You might want to build a thick wall like the Maharajas used to build in their forts, but you don't. The space is so expensive that you can't afford a 1.5 feet wall. So a good facade, I think, is like finding a life partner, and trust me, a good facade would be great to spend your life with. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's an interesting sentence because the facade stands for the life of the building, right? There needs to be that effort that goes into the design of the facade, which will impact your energy performance, which will impact your comfort, everything through the life of the building. So yeah, thanks for that. Now coming back to Stuart. Stuart, how do you think has the adoption of technology and automation in buildings and facade design, how has it evolved over time? Because you've been in this industry for the last 30 plus years, and you must have seen a big shift when there was no such tools available, and how clients or project developers were, adopting to these technologies. So how has it evolved over time? How has the increase of adoption been, and what is it that we can expect in the future?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Obviously design and technology started off on the 2D CAD systems. When CAD systems first came around, 80s and 90s. My first dealings with moving from the 2D system to the 3D system were all about facades. It was really the first thing where buildings went into a 3D space. The tools were a bit immature for the other pieces of the building back in sort of the late 90s, and the facade really was the first one to be done in a 3D space, and that was primarily for visuals. It was really for visual and design purposes. People wanted to see what it was going to look like. So you didn't really bother back then with the internal parts. But as, I guess, technology matured, and so facade and curtain wall tools, specific tools for those type of functions came onto the market, that was specific tools for that kind of evolved, allowing the user to, not only create their facade quickly, but modify it quickly, when a change needs to be occurred. Then we moved into the generative and computational design realms, where effectively programming and coding came into the situation. Now, modern day computational design, as I mentioned, uses that nodal graph kind of system, which brings the coding to the people. So it makes that situation a lot more difficult. So people can create algorithms for those bespoke and specific situations. And I know, a lot of people who actually default to the computational world for any of their large facades, because they're so used to doing that now that it's just their go-to mechanism. But it's not for everyone. So where do we head in the future? I mean, obviously you've got energy analysis as well that involves in that, and there's lots of sunlight and solar radiation analysis programs that come into that. So I guess a lot of that technology is about, rather than designing something and testing it, is that kind of the environmental impact is playing a part in that design process with the designer at the same time, and driving it together rather than that designing testing approach that we have. So it'd be interesting where it does take us. The analysis and the visuals together, we'll see where that goes. It's very hard to predict where technology will go.
Thanks, Stuart. So, yeah, you must be very happy because you have a huge opportunity. There were some very interesting numbers from Shoaib. The adoption of IT in construction industry is so small compared to many others like banking and financial and manufacturing and so on. So it's a huge opportunity that we're looking at, and even I feel. Personally, that the adoption of technology has been very, very slow in the construction industry, particularly. Still, a lot of unskilled labor and very old traditional methods being used, mostly. And of course, it's largely driven by cost, and people are not looking at the life cycle analysis. Yes, that's true. Okay, so moving on, Maz, just getting into a little more detail. Um, you know, you mentioned about an integrated design approach, right? Different systems being impacted by the facade design. So, has this impact been considered by other designers? Designers of the other systems in a building design in the projects that you've worked with. How far are they able to translate the impact of the facade to the rest of the systems so that they see the benefit, or otherwise?
Yeah, thank you, sir, for the nice question. It really got me thinking. But I mean, the projects that I've worked on so far, and the consultants that I've been involved with, I would like to particularly talk about like HVAC, lighting, and HVAC and lighting. So those consultants usually consider the facade, like what is when I say facade, I mean the fenestration, what is the amount of heat that is going to penetrate in. So HVAC system sizing, the engineers do consider like the impact of facade in their design. And also in lighting, when I say facade in interior lighting, what happens is you size or you like design your interior lighting such that you use maximum use of daylight. So there are consultants who have worked with lighting consultants who try and use less interior light where there is a potential of daylight. So we see in conventional buildings, or I mean older buildings, where there are just like lights all around, like in a grid, and you just don't think before you design the interior lighting. But the consultants now are being cautious about how to maximize this daylight integration into building. That's what I feel. But also sometimes I do feel that these systems tend to get oversized. So what we are trying to do is trying to balance, like not to oversize, but just make sure that the safety factor is at like a minimum that's required and not oversize it too much. So I think all the consultants who are trying to design a building, the end goal of all the consultants should be building अच्छा होना चाहिए. That's what I think the end motto should be. And if we do an integrative approach, then I think then there will be fabulous buildings out there. We still have a lot of potential. That's what I feel.
Thanks. Yeah, it should be a good building, but also good on performance is what I think we should ensure, apart from the functionality. Next to Gurneet. Gurneet, you have also worked on policies related to energy performance. Can you tell us, are there any policies today that mandate performance of a facade? Can be from any country. If you can give a couple of examples, how they work and how they are implemented.
Yeah, so as far as my knowledge and I have worked on and I have reviewed many policies, codes, and certification system. Most of them, in fact, almost like 99% of them, they basically give recommendations and guidelines. So basically, they mention the best criteria for elements which are controlled or related to facade, like daylighting, shading. But there is no such code or policy which mandates the facade design, or which mandates that the facade should have certain elements. So I'm very proud that our own ECBC code has taken that step and has tried to bring in daylighting and the shading element as a mandatory requirement. So because what it basically push the architects and the design team is to design a efficient and climate responsive design, because you can't achieve good daylighting without a good facade, right? And that in turn basically also helps in the performance and also helps you achieve the required thermal comfort and the visual comfort in the building. So besides this, there are few countries where they have this legislation, they call it as solar zoning legislation, where it basically tells you that you need to give provision for sunlight and its duration. So that is another aspect where they talk about having at least 2 hours of sunlight coming into the office space or the residential space. That again is something which drives a climate responsive design, though it is a bit on the reverse, where you need to allow the sun for that amount of time. So, and besides this code, there are several independent authorities. I think every one of us are aware of the LEED, GRIHA, IGBC, BREEAM, DGNB. They all have that requirement, which in one way or the other relates to the facade performance.
Okay, thanks, Gurneet. Yeah, it's very, very interesting to know you want to let the sun in for a couple of hours. If that is for the purpose of vitamin D or something, I hope they take care of having open spaces where you have direct sun and not through the glass. You know, having glass doesn't serve the purpose to get the sun in, except for the case where you want to get some heat inside. Okay, so once again to Kushagra. So is the focus on initial cost or the life cycle cost when it comes to facade? What is your experience been?
So basically, the discussion around the building life cycle cost is still a very, I would say, not to us, but to the general population, it is still a fairly new domain. Though people have started talking about it, still embodied energy, life cycle impact are seen at a distance in major mass construction projects. Also, since a lot of development is not owner occupied, the focus on initial cost is usually more. Given that housing is the most emerging sector, the Eco-Niwas Samhita, like Gurneet was talking about, ECBC, the residential ECBC, the Eco-Niwas Samhita, which lays a lot of focus on making an efficient facade. Also, the normal commercial ECBC also talks about facade and has a separate section on it. But architects, consultants, contractors, which are now more aware than before, there still need to be a paradigm shift in order to be more experiment oriented or more open to alternative solutions. There are fabric facades, phase change materials that have come in, contemporary materials, ever-evolving glass with options like color change, reduction of glare on a dynamic level. The same glass can give a reduced glare in a, when there's high sun, and when there's low sun, the glare can go down. So there's a lot of innovation that's happening across the world in facade options, but there need to be more first adopters for things to get to market. Also, simulation techniques have really evolved, and you just saw my fellow speaker, he was talking about BIM, and there are so many other aspects like daylight, energy, glare, and there are tools for all of this, and all these tools not only help in making life cycle based decisions, but also ensure that aesthetics can go hand in hand with efficiency. So having said that, I would repeat that India is still a cost sensitive market, but again, it is a very large market for that matter. And you will see all levels of decision making across the project. But I think as influencers and people who are working with many projects, I think it is the onus is on us to be more adaptive and be more open to change.
Okay. Shoaib, Shoaib, you mentioned some very valid points on how we need to invest some time on BIM so that we can reduce the time during construction, right? So yeah, that's understandable, and that's usually good in theory, but in practice, in a construction project, I don't think anybody would believe that you would reduce construction time and give you the opportunity to do a very nice BIM model and with a good amount of time. So yeah, that's the reality in the construction market, right? You typically have projects that have a timeline. Come what may, this is the project schedule. So you need to definitely have your things in place. So if you can give an example of how much time it would take to develop a BIM model to a reasonable extent, say LOD 300, LOD 200, or LOD 300. How much time will it add to the design process? Roughly, say for example, a 1 lakh square foot building, 100,000 square foot building. And this time I need a quick answer.
Okay, sir. Up to LOD 200, I think after when things are frozen, then only for modeling, I think it'll require up to 15 to 25 minutes, depending on the design you are working on. I think if you are figuring out the components, because now I'm talking in terms of adaptive facades, because now adaptive facades are very common in many buildings, and adaptive facades have this thing repetitive patterns. And once you figure out one component of the pattern, after running all the analysis on it based on stress analysis or maybe energy analysis or lighting analysis, and once a single component is done, then you need to only repeat that component on the entire facade. And for that we have inbuilt tools in BIM models. They're in MicroStation. Those who use MicroStation, there is a plugin for computational design that is by the name generative component, which Stott sir has mentioned, that can be used to facilitate this process to speed up this process, and that will hardly take 10 to 15 minutes to repeat that component, because now component has been fully analyzed. Similarly, Revit has this inbuilt feature called adaptive families or adaptive components, where you need to only figure out one component, and then you can deliver the entire project just by repeating that component multiple times. So
if you don't have a Revit model, to generate a Revit model, for example, what would be how many days or how many weeks is the time required?
If things are not frozen and if you are still in design process, then I think by using computational design strategies, you can like by running multiple analysis, you can take, I think, 1 week to 10 days to figure out a good like high performing facade, which is also good looking, because now tools are available which can run virtually all the shading analysis, all the radiation analysis, and you can now figure out the correct orientation of the facade. And you can, yes sir. So I hope, yeah.
Yeah, I understand. So there are tools available, and it doesn't take much time to really achieve a good high performance facade. So one question to Gunit, because Gunit has worked a lot on building diagnostics. So how does the performance of a facade vary over the life of a building? Have you come across any studies through your research, through your projects? How does it vary, and what is the impact?
As Maas has said, that there are two components to that facade design. One is the passive components, that is shading, orientation, the amount of window area, the skin section, light shelves, internal light shelves, and the specification of windows. So as per as my understanding, these components, they generally, the performance of these components don't vary too much with the life of the building as they get old, because all this component, they just require regular maintenance. But once they are in place, because these are design elements, so there is no impact on their performance. In fact, what I feel is with the climate change and the temperature increasing year on year, the performance of these elements will improve, because they will be able to give the outdoor conditions are becoming worse, so the effective performance or the percentage benefit you will achieve will be more as we go to next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But yes, there are active components, and we all know that a building facade is the one which interacts with the external conditions, right? The weather conditions, rain, the wind load, cyclones. I think as a country we are facing right now. There is this probability of a cyclone near Odisha. So those kind of conditions, they basically impact the joints of the facade with the building, and those are the areas where you get more of heat coming in or the cool air going out. So those are the factors which I think with due time we need to refurbish them, or we need to put effort in getting those things in place, because those are important aspect as far as energy efficiency is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very important to also look at leakages around the buildings, and your insulation, the type of insulation that is used. So whether the insulation is sitting in the right place after a period of time, that becomes important to ensure a good performance. So I have one last question to maybe Kushagra before we open the stage for Q&A. So Kushagra, how do you balance aesthetics, functionality, maintenance, and the cost of a facade? You've told us previously about how there needs to be a balance between different components. So can you give us maybe a couple of examples where some innovative approach was taken to achieve this balance and convince all the parties for a particular facade, with your experience of the gamut of projects that you have?
Sure. So that is a little difficult question, but usually there'll be one parameter that needs to be externally balanced. Having all solution expecting out of a single design might not be a very practical thing always. But if you look at it from a alternate point of view, you can definitely achieve it. Let us take an example of cost, like you said. Let us say the team has come up with a proposal to have a predominantly glass facade. Now, if you have a look at the upfront cost, you may not achieve aesthetics and functionality because you want to go with the cheapest glass available or a very fit the bill kind of a glass available, assuming maintenance is the same for all glass types that you select. But if you look at a cradle to grave cost or a more life cycle oriented viewpoint, a DGU or a better shading would definitely fit the bill. Let us take another popular example, the Airtel headquarter building, which falls on the Delhi-Gurgaon highway, has a modulating facade which changes its U value with the weather. There are fins on the top and bottom of the facade that are closed in the summer, and like we all know, still air is an insulator and moving air is a conductor. So the facade becomes an insulator in the summer when the fins are closed, and it becomes a conductor in the winter when the fins are open. Basically it is tough on maintenance, but great on operational cost. And if you talk about the feature as an aesthetic element and you are moving fins it's more like a live facade, it definitely makes a lot of sense. There's no big science in it, just a common logic and easy to operate, but the maintenance might become an issue because the glass cleaning from the inside of this thing, since it's not permanently locked, there may be dust accumulation, and it can be dealt with technology, but then not an easy decision to take. So what I'm saying is we can move to alternatives, and all these parameters can fit: aesthetics, functionality, maintenance, and cost. Just that it requires the entire team to be a little more open and implement solutions and look at their alternate viability rather than just looking at a single aspect. So if it's the owner, he needs to look beyond the cost. If it's the architect, he needs to look beyond the aesthetics, and so on.
Okay, thanks. So, Renu, are we on time for the Q&A?
Yeah, we can start with the Q&A session. I think there are quite a number of questions which is sent to you.
Yeah, okay. So I'll maybe start reading out a couple of questions here. So one of the question is, what software or what tool is available for optimization of BIPV in buildings, on facade, maybe Stuart, or who wants to take that question? Integrating BIPV, is there any tool that can model BIPV effectiveness on a building facade?
What is BIPV?
The building integrated photovoltaic.
Oh, right. I'm not aware of any specific tool for that. I'm sure one could be customized for that purpose, though.
Okay.
Anybody
else?
Tools, there's one tool called Red Screen, which is the RET screen, which can help you determine the energy consumption based on the angle at which the panels are put in.
Right.
And another tool like Equest or Energy Plus, which can help you identify according to Q value that what is the active solar energy that's going inside that is affecting your air conditioning consumption. So no straightforward tool as such, because it's not a single thing. It's integration of renewable energy and your glass and permeability. So it can be multiple 2-3 software, and you can analyze and club them both to find the solution.
Yeah.
PV Assist is another tool again that basically
PV Assist is
for
another version of Red Screen.
solar renewable energy, but not, as Kushagra has said, you need to use 2 or 3 tools to actually model the impact of BIPV, shading and heating.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. So it's a combination of maybe at least 2 tools that are required, because your solar calculations come from a solar tool, which actually looks at the performance of your panels and the direction and the radiation over a year and so on, and estimates the energy generation. And then you have a building software which can give you the different orientations of your facade, and so it's a combination as of now. Maybe we will see a tool which can merge these two in the future. Maybe from Stuart's team, I guess.
It's all about demand. It's all about the demand. So.
Yeah. So one question from Dhaval Karba is, could we have a take on AI and ML on energy analysis and its effects on design decisions from the panelists? Use of AI and ML in energy analysis. I think there are a lot of tools available today, but if anybody wants to have a take.
I think, Guru, you can take this. You have already developed an AI for your PMS system. So artificial intelligence, as we all know, can be applied to any domain. And building, there are different areas where you can apply that and you can achieve efficiency. So one is basically predicting the operating schedule for the next day based on weather data and based on other information or the train data that you feed into those models. Then predictive maintenance is another area where you can use AI to predict when the system, when a particular component or particular system will go off, so that you can do a proper maintenance at that moment. I mean, there are a number of things. One can be that based on the occupancy number, you are predicting the control point, the set points, and you can varying those set points. So AI and ML can be applied on buildings, since and buildings are the right this thing, because there are different parameters that are interacting with each other, and for a human being to actually come up with a optimum solution, it's very difficult, and it's time consuming. So AI and ML can definitely help in that.
So one
Sure.
point that I think I'd like to make, adding to what Gurneet sir said, is we do understand that there is always a performance gap, like in what is envisaged, what the building would perform versus what is happening actually in the building. So if you integrate the AI and ML into the operation of the building, then there is a possibility to reduce that gap, because that now the control is not on the user or the occupant, which is very ambiguous, because you do not have control of how the occupant is going to use the building. So if you integrate AI and ML into the building, then I think the building might start performing better. That's my take on it.
Sure. Anybody else has any take on this? Okay. So from my point of view, AI and ML is very relevant more for active systems in a building, because you would want to know with changing weather what is happening with the system. How do you want to ramp up, ramp down your system when the system is due for maintenance, due for an overhaul. All these you can get very easily. And when you have complex systems like in air conditioning or integrating other things with automation, that's where you would need AI or ML coming up to process a lot of data and make sense out of the data and give you some good insights on your systems and your building performance. But I think building facade being a passive component, I think it needs a bit more of real intelligence, I would say, and it needs more of a thought process during design, because that's not something. The sun path is not something that's going to change over a period of time. So some things can be very clearly fixed during the initial design stage, and that's what needs to be done to achieve a good, efficient building. So coming back to some more questions. So one question from Venkatesh I see is, what do you think is the future for organic-based facades such as algal facades? Anybody, maybe Gurneet, Kushagra, or somebody, you want to take that question?
I think future is as bright as our willingness to adopt it. More technology. See, nothing is perfect. I mean, no facade you'll find a perfect solution to, and there'll be always some problem that it will address, and always some scenario in which it will be the perfect solution. So as far as we are willing to change, and like I said, be it a waste facade, be it a fabric facade, be it a fin-based facade or a fully automated facade, all these things need first adopters. And like it is true for any startup, any new idea, it is true for any new facade concept. So the future is as bright as yours and mine and us, our collective willingness to adapt it.
Okay, anybody else has any specific answer? Okay, so I think that's more from a designer point of view, what materials can be used, what is available, not maybe very relevant for the performance-based facade design that we are discussing here. So one question is, how do you integrate the resilience aspect into the building design? How the buildings can withstand natural calamities and so on. This question from AK Sham. Who wants to go for this question? How has there been any attempt on resilient buildings while we are looking also at performance?
Yes, with this COVID situation, I think now people are also looking into that aspect. And so there's another parameter that as a designer or building developer, people are taking that into consideration, resilience. So initially it was structural, then energy efficiency, then well-being, and now there is a shift in focus also, where people are uh, planning the infrastructure to keep into consideration the situation that we all are facing today. So definitely yes, there is focus now and priority of designing buildings, designing resilient buildings.
Yeah. So just to answer that a little more, resilience in buildings, I don't think it is a compromise with anything else. That is a part of the design, any which ways. It has to be a part of the design, I feel. Resilience in terms of structure, you follow the code for that particular region, which is specified by the National Building Code in case of India, and and resilience in case in terms of active systems, as Guneet was mentioning, we are in a current situation of pandemic, and how do you get employees or building occupants back into the office buildings? How do you get them? Because they will be paranoid about the health, their health, and what will be the air quality inside the buildings and so on, right? So how do you build resilience in that aspect? So maybe systems, innovative systems like radiant cooling or others that can ensure 100% fresh air inside the building without any recirculation can be one of the options, one of the aspects to look at. And the other part of it is automation. How do you make buildings how do you control and monitor and operate the buildings in this kind of a situation when there is no availability of manpower to run your buildings, to operate your buildings? So this is possible through automation, right? The remote monitoring, control, and analysis of building performance can ensure you have a sustainable building. At the same time, you ensure your health and safety of your operations personnel are taken care of. So that's another aspect of resilience that we need to look at in the future. I think a lot of technology adoption is going to happen with this pandemic situation, and the numbers that Shoaib was showing will see a paradigm shift in different sectors, and it'll be very interesting to see. Okay, so one more question is how can one incorporate the existing surroundings the impact of existing surroundings on a building facade in building simulation? Say if there are any trees, adjacent buildings, some other structures coming up. So who wants to go for it?
So I think most of the simulation softwares do like let you model component blocks in terms of like adjacent buildings and trees. So you can just have like do a ground survey of what the surrounding buildings are like, and then you can just like replicate that in the modeling software itself. I think that also has a lot of impact on your final performance of the building. If you don't consider that in while modeling the building, I think your performance is going to change a lot. Because if you have like a really tall building with a glass facade standing right like in front of your glass, then you're going to have a lot of radiation heat gain. So that is something that you need to integrate while you simulate. And mostly all softwares like EQS, Design Builder, OpenStudio, all of them have this, accessibility.
Yeah. Okay. So it's possible to model. Right. Any further questions? Renu, how are we doing on time?
I think we are right on time. Whatever remaining questions, I think we will send it to everyone, so that you can send your answers and we'll pass it over to the viewer. It was a great session. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for the wonderful comments. I'm getting messages on my WhatsApp saying that please explain this, Shoaib. You are going to be in great trouble now. Everyone is asking questions on all those software which you have mentioned over there. And of course, Stuart is also getting a number of questions on this softwares which are not being used in India, which he's shown that image of his has. I think there are too many questions on that, on the London building, right? So yeah, people want to get answers to those questions. And thank you so much, Guru Prakash, for such a wonderful moderation of the entire session. Thank you, Kushagra, for your views on all integrated buildings and how to manage a building considering all aspects of building, including heating and ventilation and everything, passive and active sources of components which are going into a building. Thank you so much, Gurneet. Thanks a lot for those views on your own projects. How you managed to design such wonderful, nice buildings, and which is absolutely sustainable, absolutely green. I'm sure everyone will be wanting to know about all the designs which you have done, which are so sustainable. And thank you, Shoaib, for those insightful description of all your slides. I'm sure that was too less a time for everyone to understand. And that was too much into a 3-minute slideshow. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of curiosity rising from everyone to know more about that, which would definitely a learning. This will create a sequence of learning in people to understand all those systems. And Mars, thank you so much for all your inputs. Thank you so much for your views on various points on sustainability, on products, on various systems which we use on for attaining that sustainable buildings. And Guru Prakash, surely we would have another discussion with you on these points. As a moderator, you are not getting time to express your own views, I know, and I wish you would come as a panelist in our next discussion.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you everyone. So viewers, thanking you for each one of you for spending time over here. Thank you for the questions, and you will get your answers within the next 1 or 2 days, answers to your questions. And everyone, please do stay safe. Please do exercise. Please do wear mask and stay safe. Thank you so much.